All right. So the recording has started. So good morning.
Morning, Perry.
How are you today?
I'm very, very well, especially considering that yesterday was my birthday.
Yes, I was. Well, you beat me to it. I wanted to, wish you a happy belated, a young, very young 79.
You did your research.
Yes, 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 a young 79. And I must say I like the outfit.
Oh,
Yeah, my father had one of those, and my mother had one of those back in the day. So when I saw that, it
yeah,
brought back something for me,
yes.
you
It's a,
know.
it's a Nigerian heritage.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, listen, it's a pleasure to speak with you. Um, Before we sort of get into things, I would like to tell, you know, people how we sort of got to know each other. Um, when we were introduced to each other, and you saw my writing, and it's actually on the back of my book today. You came back to me, and I'm going to read this. This is what you said. Perry Douglas has certainly excited us all to explore the limitless dimensions of the mind and how to apply it to our personal life with beneficial effect. But he seems to take us beyond the common limits of cognitive intelligence to the more creative and practical, imaginative realms that produce inventive solutions to man's common dilemmas. So I said, hold on, you know, like my Jamaican mother-in-law, she said, but wait, you know, how, how did like you immediately like nailed it. And I said, okay, I asked permission. I said, I need to put this on the back of my book. Is this man, how does this man get it? So I'm going to ask you, how did you just get me, or what I was trying to say?
Well, I am a historian and also a literary person in my studies, my degrees, and so on. And it's very interesting. I learn in reading what people say
Mhm.
to understand the person who says it. And
Okay.
that is really what happened to me when I didn't read your book,
Yes.
just read the summary,
Yes.
and I read it a couple of times, and I began to see the person. So I see the author
Mhm.
more than I see what he has written, because until you do that, you really don't actually get to understand who this person is and what he's trying to say.
Mhm.
Because how a person thinks and how he articulates it, sometimes there's a gap.
Mhm.
But if you
Mhm.
can understand where he's trying to get to and you get to understand the person that is writing it,
Mhm.
then I think it helps you to appreciate what
Mhm.
he's trying to say, even if you don't agree.
Mhm.
So what was
Yes.
happening is that I was becoming very excited about this author
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
thinking that he does talk about intelligence. He values the mind, but he takes the mind beyond the academic, beyond the, as we say, the cognitive, and he definitely goes into the creative sphere, like an artist would.
Mm.
You know, an artist, when he sculpts or when he writes or when he paints, um, he he actually paints out of an inspiration that is bigger than his mind, but it uh, it activates his mind
Mm.
and allows him, whether he's a speaker, to articulate, whether he's a painter, to paint, whether whatever he is,
Mm.
his actions become the product of who he is. And
Mm.
and I like authors.
Mhm.
Uh, you get excited about the person,
Mm.
you know, and
Mhm.
then you can take what he or she has expressed
Mhm.
in whatever literary or artistic form, how he expresses it.
Mhm.
Same thing happens when you go to a movie.
Mhm.
And you know what the movie does and says is one thing, but I study the guys who are acting, the women who are acting, and I say, you know, this guy really got caught up in what he was trying to express
Mhm.
as an actor.
Mhm.
And you become I went to a movie recently, and
Mhm.
I saw the actor, and afterwards I was talking with the person I went with, and I said, you know, this person must get some kind of award or something. The movie was not really about what it was about. The
Mm.
movie was really about the person who was acting, and I
Yes.
became all caught up with the person. So
Mm.
it may be that that's just the way I am, the way I have grown, the way I've matured, and the way I have experienced life.
Mhm. Well, look, I appreciate that because I think it helped me kind of maybe understand myself because it was exactly what I was trying to do. And when I wrote the book, it was just because I saw some problems. I would like to offer some thoughts, but the book is really a lot about my curiosity about the world, and if we can think differently, we don't always have to think the same. What can happen, but so what I would like to ask now is maybe just tell us a little bit about, yourself. I'm fascinated in your background, and I'm fascinated in what you're doing now.
Well, it's very strange. People see me as a religious man. People see me as a spiritual person. People see me in the theological world. Um, but you know, it's very interesting. I did not actually grow up in the church.
Okay.
Um, I went to church.
Hmm.
I, when I was a young man, I thought the church was an anachronism.
Hmm.
I thought the church was not up to date. I thought the church was caught in religious rituals and religious traditions and religious activities.
Hmm.
And the more I delved into the text, which is the Bible, is
Hmm.
the more I began to see that that people do not, in fact, get to understand what is behind what is being written. Uh,
Mm.
I began to value my personal experience of the divine, my personal experience of the cosmos, um, to the point where I would actually think, when we think heaven, people, I don't know, people think of some esoteric and so, but I think of heaven as the cosmos, you know,
Mm.
it's out there. I don't
Yes.
know heaven, I haven't been there,
Yes. Yes.
but the cosmos, what the
Yes.
cosmos gives to the scientist,
Yes.
you see, a world that is unending, a world that is ever expanding.
Mm.
There was a time when even scientists thought that the cosmos was shrinking, but a century ago, they came to the conclusion, no, the world, the cosmos is ever expanding.
Yep.
And when you begin to think like that, it puts you in a dimension in which you have to, with humility, search and
Yes.
and you have to value what
Yes.
is out there, and then you
Yes.
can try and define it, you
Mhm.
know. So I grew with a sense that I tell people, you know, I was one of twins, and
Okay.
but my twin brother didn't make it out of the hospital,
Mm.
and so I look back and I said, you know, there was a gap in me because we were in our mother's womb for 9 months, so to speak.
Mhm.
And when we came out, he left me. And
Mm.
and there was a kind of gap in me. But rather than that gap being a hindrance and a negative for me, what it did is that it allowed me to draw closer to my older brother, who was just a year older than me. And it is very interesting that it's as if we grew as twins. So, and my older brother had a lot of influence on my life. And I patterned him and I competed with him and so on. And the same thing happened a few years later with my mother. Our mother died, and I became very conscious. I loved her, you know.
Sure,
I was
certainly.
only 10 years old.
Yep.
But
Wow.
but you see, what happened was that I felt a gap in my life,
Mhm.
and I didn't understand it until I discovered that there's a God who loves me
Yes.
and gave himself for me.
Yes.
And I was attracted to him. But
Yeah.
I never thought, like most people are told that they're sinners. I never thought I was a sinner. I never thought hell was made for me. I
Yeah.
never thought those kinds of things. So
Wow.
so I was drawn to the divine, towards God,
Hmm.
out of a realization that whoever he is, he sacrificed
Hmm.
in order for me
Hmm.
to become.
Hmm.
When
Hmm.
I realized that, then
Hmm.
what happened is that I saw the love of God
Hmm.
and I applied it to my life. And
Yes.
things
Yes.
are like that. I began to wonder whether other persons were like that and why it is that they are so held back in life. I
Hmm.
saw the oppressed people from I was a
Hmm.
teenager. I
Hmm.
was attracted to the poor and the oppressed, and they're often forgotten and
Hmm.
ignored and so
Hmm.
on.
Hmm.
And I thought, why should they be?
Hmm.
They have potential inside of them. And I
Certainly.
began to see people like that.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
is what has influenced my life. I became involved. I always had a hunger to know
Hmm.
things. I had a hunger to experience things, and I
Hmm.
had a hunger to discover more and more of the unseen,
Hmm.
because I felt
Yes.
that
Yes.
unseen was just as real, perhaps more real than
Hmm.
this. And
Hmm.
uh, and that really led me to uh, develop a movement with a few of my friends in Jamaica, where I grew up,
Hmm.
in trying to help people to know
Hmm.
more about who they are and
Hmm.
about what they can do and why they're here and
Hmm.
all of that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
led to a whole movement in Jamaica that I think helped to transform the church, transform even my country.
Okay.
you know. So that's in in brief. That's the only way I can just put
Yeah.
it in some kind of articulate expression.
No, that's really interesting, and it fits well with how I think from a applied intelligence. And you use I'm just taking some notes. We're going to go over. You use the word apply it to your life,
Hmm.
and when you talk about how you came to your faith, you talk about it in a very scientific way. You see, what I think is beautiful about science, right, and intelligence is that it's okay to use your mind and apply it to your faith, your whatever it is. So you talk about the cosmos. So you're really going into physics, and one of the things which is scientifically correct, the universe is ever expanding.
That's
The
correct.
universe is infinite.
That's
We
correct.
don't know where the end is of the universe, and we don't know where the beginning of the universe is. The
Mhm.
universe is ever expanding.
Mhm.
So when you talk like this and how you've come to your faith and understanding, it becomes a personal relationship because you've intellectually, configured in your mind that here's the universe, it's ever expanding. You're not creating sort of fantasy things to justify it. You've just gone through, here's the cosmos, you've gone through the physics, the universe is ever expanding, and here's how you've come to your decisions. I mean, if more people can think like that, you know, I believe the world will be a better place.
Well, it's interesting you are saying it in that way because for me, when I was growing up as a teenager and with a faith that was personal
Mhm.
and with a belief in a God who was out there somewhere,
Yes,
but
yes,
who I had access to,
yes.
you know, in those years, you would probably recall too, although you're younger than me,
Yep.
that 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 there was a tension between science and religion,
Correct,
and not just a tension. You couldn't be a scientist and be thought of as a Christian, you
correct.
know, or you couldn't be a Christian and get caught up in science.
Yes,
And but it's very interesting that I never got lost in that tension.
yes,
I appreciated the
yes,
intellect. I
yes.
appreciated the thoughts. I
Mhm,
appreciate creativity,
mhm.
and and I began to see
Mhm.
that uh, that truth is parallel.
Yep,
You
yep.
know, um, religious truth or spiritual truth, and you have the metaphysical, and
Yes,
you have the physical
yes.
dimensions of truth.
Mhm,
And I appreciated scientists. I had good friends
mhm,
in the intellectual world, when I was growing up, who were
mhm,
scientists,
mhm.
and it was very interesting to see that they were looking at the unknown world as something to explore,
Yep.
something to grasp.
Mhm,
And and when they went into their laboratories and they tested and they did all their research and collected data and came to conclusions,
mhm.
they call them theories.
Yeah,
Never
that's right.
forgot.
That's right.
You know,
Theories. That's right.
they're theories, and I appreciated the scientists for calling them theories and not necessarily
Yep.
facts, because we're
Facts.
always exploring it.
Yep.
What they
Theoretical
believe,
physics.
indeed,
Yep.
what they believed last year, they may not believe today because they
100%.
were continually exploring. And
That's definitely
and
science.
Terry, today I can tell you I have very, very good science friends, and we talk all the time.
Mhm,
And I am I'm learning so much more.
mhm.
What a scientist told me just recently, they said, the scientists are discovering that when they go into the unknown world, they're discovering that when you die,
Mhm,
on the other side,
mhm,
what they
mhm,
say, on the
mhm,
other side, you sleep,
mhm,
and they're
mhm,
calling it sleep.
mhm. Yes.
And then you awaken.
Mhm,
I thought to myself, scientists are saying that.
mhm.
Religion has been saying that, Jesus himself,
Yes.
he said, no, Lazarus is not dead, he's asleep.
Mhm,
And,
mhm,
and there are things like that we are
mhm.
discovering.
Yes.
The scientist, my good scientist friend, he did an experiment showing me that he can take the electronic um, wires
Mhm,
and connect them with a breadfruit tree,
mhm, mhm,
and you hear music,
mhm,
you hear
mhm,
sounds,
mhm,
you hear, like a trumpet, and
mhm,
it's amazing.
mhm,
And
mhm.
I'm saying, but religion has told us that.
Mhm,
You see, um, if you don't worship me, the Bible says
mhm,
about that. If you don't worship me, then the very stones will cry out.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
See, and there is sound,
mhm,
there is light,
mhm,
there is space,
mhm,
wind,
mhm.
all of that in
Mhm.
what we call the unknown world or the
Yes.
unreal world. But
Yes.
that's more real than the
Yep.
physical world.
Yeah, no, I 100% get that. And it's undeniable, irrespective of what you believe, right? If you believe in religion or if you don't believe in religion, it's undeniable that the Bible has wisdom. And you've mentioned the words. There's wisdom behind the words. I took another note here, and one of the things you said, which I thought was also very interesting, is you didn't believe in sinners, and what people talk of sinners, and you had to suffer and all these things. You did not, because a lot about where the Bible gets a lot of criticism, is that it and I wrote some articles on that. It portrays an image that you have to suffer. It portrays an image that, it looks down on sinners, and it actually is not an inclusive situation, because it becomes exclusive, because it tells everybody, you can't do this, you can't do that. And people who may do things because they're humans, right? Um, it's like the Bible excludes you, right? And it promotes suffering, and it promotes exclusion. So I was happy to hear your words on that. So maybe just expand on that a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, even within the religious spheres, you have people reacting to the human side of who we are
Yes.
in different ways.
Hmm.
And there's no question that in Christianity, certainly in my growing up years, we learned that, well, all have sinned and come short, and the
Yes.
wages of sin is death.
Hmm.
And the notion that there's nothing good in us, you
Hmm.
know, we're all like thieves. We're all like, or we like sheep have gone astray. And there's that condemnatory side to life.
Hmm.
And, it's true. However, what we
Hmm.
don't realize is
Hmm.
that there is also a creative side to us. And
Yes.
although man has cut himself off
Hmm.
from the supernatural and from the divine,
Hmm.
he's still creating cities. He's
Hmm.
still, building highways, and he's still, in a most remarkable way,
Hmm.
he's still able to
Hmm.
tap into his potential.
Hmm.
I'm amazed when I go to the circus.
Yes.
These guys do all this thing. I say, how did they do that? You
Yes.
know, I'm amazed when I go to the sports arena and I see these guys, whether it's in soccer or in athletics, gymnastics. I'm saying, how do they do that? I can't
Yes.
even think of doing that. But you
Yeah.
see, God did say
Hmm.
that if man comes together, this is in the
Hmm.
Bible, if
Hmm.
man comes together, when he comes together, there's nothing that he cannot do.
Hmm. Hmm.
See?
Hmm.
Now, I think that, the church has faltered along those lines and not
Yes.
speak as well about our potential. You see? And the problem is not our potential, The, as a matter of fact, we might say that people who are not even religious are
Hmm.
accomplishing a lot more than people who
True.
are religious,
True.
because they're tapping into their potential. You know,
Yes.
they've realized that they have entrepreneurial, um, capital. They have social capital. They have intellectual capital. As you would say,
Hmm.
they have the ability to do remarkable things.
Yes.
That is not the problem.
Hmm.
Problem is, why do they do it?
Yes.
At whose
Yes.
expense? you know and this is what I have discovered,
Hmm.
that God is saying, you know when people get together, there's nothing that they cannot achieve. But the big question is, why do they do it? You can
Yes.
build a city, remarkable skyscrapers,
Hmm.
architecture that is out of this world,
Hmm.
and our culture is amazing.
Hmm.
But you know, after 50 years, after 100 years, the city becomes a ghetto. It
Yeah.
becomes a
Yes.
haunt of criminals
Yes.
and so on.
Yes.
In other words, when we do things, we either do it at the expense of other people, we
Mhm,
oppress
mhm,
some so that the few can make it, you
mhm,
know.
mhm,
Economically, we rob one
mhm.
sector for
Yes.
the minority to make it in life,
Mhm,
so on. And I think that that is really uh, where we are. And
mhm.
so the greatest things that we create, the
Yes.
greatest civilizations, all
Mhm,
these civilizations, whether you talk about Persia,
mhm,
Greeks, the Romans, the
mhm,
Egyptians, and
mhm,
even today,
mhm.
the Soviet Union,
Yes.
Americans,
Mhm,
you know.
mhm.
Somebody once said that it takes about 240 years
Yes.
for an empire to
Mhm.
self-destruct,
Yes, 100%.
you know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and I'm saying, wow, why do they self-destruct? And then when I read the book, I realize that the book says that. It doesn't number it, but
Mhm,
it does say that what we do
mhm.
works against us.
Yes.
So nations are not destroyed by
Mhm.
outside nations. They are destroyed from
By
within.
themselves. Yes.
And
Yes. Yes.
so all of those realities
Mhm,
are things that we have to be cognizant of. And I think the church
mhm,
has to get awake,
mhm,
awakened.
mhm,
Part of my role and responsibility
mhm,
in challenging the church today is
mhm.
you can always blame people, whether it's
Yes.
politicians, the business
Yes.
sector. You can always blame them for
Mhm,
what they're doing wrong.
mhm.
But there's a saying in the Bible that judgment begins in the house of the Lord. In other words, the
Yes.
reason why we can point a finger at them is because you're not doing anything. You're separating yourself and waiting for the great airlift when you're going to be taken away and rescued.
Mhm,
When I think there's a different story
mhm,
told in the Bible
mhm,
that we have a responsibility,
mhm.
you know, uh, to to build our nation
Yeah.
and to do
Yes.
it in concert with
Yes.
the divine.
Well, that's a good segue. But I must again trying to connect, science. Your note about it takes about 240 years for an empire to fall or self-destruct. It's actually true. I actually have in my book. I mean, a lot of people don't know the Mongol Empire was the longest empire in the world. They created the modern world in terms of Eurasia or whatnot, but they self-destructed. And one of the and you mentioned also one of the reasons it was, let's say you said it's in the Bible. One of the reasons what they self-destruct too was also because of climate changed at that point in time. The
That's true.
climate did change. The steep area, that green area where their nomads able to move. Climate change, was a factor. So again, whether you believe in the Bible or you believe in the religion, that was said, and that's what happened. So there is wisdom again within that. Now, what I want to move into is, and I want to stick with your talking about the church and transformation, because the church um, has played a significant role in Black culture, and it's played a significant role from slavery times, right? We know that amazing song, Amazing Grace. If you actually listen to the words, that was a song that allowed people to keep their humanity and have strength while they've been brutalized, by slavery. Well, what you're saying now, there's some key words here. You're talking about transformation, you're talking about blame, and I think that goes to personal responsibility. So the question of the day is, how is Christianity, right? Is it a barrier to Black economic progress or Black economic success. So one of the things I also do is I'm a bit of a historian. Well, I think I'm a bit of a historian. And we look, I know you're founder of the Caribbean Jewish, coalition. And I've had a lot of interaction with Jewish people over the years, and in my former life in the investment business, lots of clients. And one of the main things is that they say they don't blame anybody. They take responsibility for their own life. And their religion, okay, Judaism, is more about their own progress, their own success, their own economic progress. I wrote something down yesterday because a rabbi, friends with a rabbi in Montreal, and he said something. He told me a story. He said once a rabbi was talking to somebody else about prayer, right? Prayer, and he said the rabbi went into economics, and then the rabbi said, "What did you expect me to believe in a God that I just pray to, as that's going to help me? No, I have to, prosper. There's nothing wrong with business. I have to prosper. I have to move forward, because if I succeed, and if my family succeeds and other Black Jews succeed in business, the whole tribe, and use the word, the whole tribe succeeds." So let me hear your thought in regards to, Christianity, blame, Black economic progress. I don't have a question. I just want you to just tell me what your thoughts are.
Well, it's very interesting. The culture in which we grew up um, has been tampered with, or has been shaped
Mm-hmm.
by, it's either shaped by you or
Mm-hmm.
shaped by others.
Yes.
And we have been through uh, the last centuries um, talking about slavery and talking about oppression. The truth of the matter is that slavery didn't really begin with the British and the Spanish and the French um,
Correct.
capturing people from Africa and bringing them to the West. Um, it's in human nature to
Yes.
conquer, to take
Yes.
advantage of,
Yes.
and to claim things for self. And,
Yes.
and whole nations do that. And they've always been doing that. And the entire uh, slavery culture that we have known, the great transference of people by force from Africa into the West, has destroyed Africa.
Yes.
Colonialism has taken advantage of weak nations,
Hmm.
and the economic development of peoples have followed in the train of one culture capturing another.
Hmm.
No, what we don't realize is that in Africa itself, tribes fought against tribes. And
Yes.
in fact,
They slaved each other.
well, I was going to say that it's no secret now
Yeah.
that the, the the Europeans didn't actually go into Africa to capture them. The
Correct.
Africans, is the Africans who captured their
Correct.
neighbors and sold us. You
Yes.
know, um,
Facts.
now when you understand that, and you realize that the Europeans capitalized on it,
Yes.
and and took a hold of millions of people, brought them in the West, and developed the West uh, at their own benefit, meaning the benefit of Europeans.
Yep.
And also in Africa, they went in and, as the word we use is, colonized
Yes.
and oppressed and took advantage. They may develop a country, but they developed the country at the benefit of Britain, the benefit of France, especially at the benefit of the Dutch, and so on. And and the interesting thing is that within that movement, because of the strength of the church in Europe,
Hmm.
they were part of it.
100%.
You know, they were part of it. And so the church has to take some responsibility as
Yes.
well. And they encouraged us
Mhm.
in West, slaves, um, and in Africa too. They encouraged us
Mhm.
uh, to be peaceful and to serve our masters and
Yes.
all of that
Yes.
kind of stuff, you
Yes.
know. But and while they were doing that, it gave the European masters the opportunity to take advantage of us, you know. So there is a sense in which Christianity has done a bad deed
Yes.
to our cultures
Hmm.
and ethnics, blacks, the Africans, the blacks in the West, and so on. But I have, because I'm a historian myself and a churchman, in my studies of the church, I've also recognized that economic development followed the uh, the strength and the growth of the church into Europe,
Yes, it did.
you know, into the West as well. So, and then when I look at my own country, Jamaica, I realize that the slavery movement was crushed by slave rebellion
Yeah.
in Jamaica.
Jamaica, yes.
Was very strong, and then there were some Christian men, I guess women too, in Britain especially,
Mhm.
that were convicted about the oppression of peoples,
Mhm.
and they abolished the slave trade, abolished slavery, and so on. And what happened in Jamaica is that in the abolition of slavery and following the uh, the development
Mhm.
of um, what they call the free villages
Yeah.
in the Jamaica system,
Mhm.
it was the church that was strongest in the development of the free villages. And it is the church that started schools, the church um, started housing projects, the church that started education, everything. The church really had a strong influence in Jamaica. And I think that this is my perspective
Yeah.
historically. I think that that is why, for example, Jamaicans, and to broaden it, the people of the Caribbean
Mhm.
have grown differently
Yes.
to how some of the other Afro um, persons, like in
Hmm.
America, in
Hmm.
Canada, even in Britain,
Hmm.
how they have grown because they were kept in subjection and oppressed
Yes.
for another whole century.
Hmm.
I remember when Martin Luther King came to Jamaica. I was a young man.
Oh, I didn't even know you went to Jamaica. Oh,
Oh, yes, he came to
yes.
Jamaica
Yes.
and he was floored. He said he did not realize that there was a black culture that was in charge of themselves. You know, it is said that his whole speech about I have a dream,
Hmm.
that it was written in Jamaica, or it was
Wow.
inspired
Wow.
by his
That's
experience in Jamaica.
wow.
And he visited Jamaica a couple of times.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is that I didn't even know I was black,
Yeah.
until I came to
Wow.
America,
Yeah.
you know, and I was taking the bus and they put me in the back seat. And I didn't think anything. I just went and sat in the back. I thought they were just, you know, until I
Wow.
realized what was happening.
Yeah.
And 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 so it's when you think culturally and ethnically and so on, it's one culture calling another culture black.
Yes.
You know, they don't even say Africa; they say black.
Yep.
And and so once you're black, you're tarnished.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and I cannot, to be very frank with you, Perry,
Mm,
I cannot understand how a white man can look at me and think that
mm.
he is better than me.
Yes.
It blows my mind.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know?
Yes.
In fact,
Yes.
I have to protect myself from thinking, but I'm better than him. You know?
Yeah.
And this is really what has been happening.
Mhm.
The church became weakened
Yes.
with the notion
Yes.
that they developed an escapist kind of mentality, a large
Yes.
part
Yes.
of the church, and felt that along they swallowed the notion that there must be separation between church and state,
Mhm.
and the church must keep itself separate and away, and so they were looking toward heaven.
Yeah.
And the church generally rejects
Mm.
the world, so to speak,
Mhm.
and is waiting to be rescued.
Yes. Ready
You
to be
know,
rescued.
it's an escapist
Yes.
approach
Yes.
to spirituality.
Yes.
But but the humanists came
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
says, no, humans are not just wretches. Humans have potential.
Yes.
They can do stuff and all of
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And the church was influenced with that too. But eventually, most of humanism became very secular,
Yes.
um,
It did.
very atheistic, and so on.
Mhm.
And but it's only today, in these days, I think that there is a shift that's taking
Mhm.
place.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm caught up in that shift, where what I'm recognizing is that where the text tells me that in the beginning, the world was created, the world came into being, the world was physicalized, three dimensions of the world, the air space,
Mhm.
the water space,
Mhm.
land space,
Mhm.
and then man came into being.
Yes. Yes.
Take care of it,
Mhm.
you see?
Mhm.
And today I'm saying, but if I am a man and a man of God,
Mhm.
then I have to go back to that understanding of who I am, made in the image and likeness of this divine person, inbreathed by him,
Mhm.
and 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 given a responsibility to
Mhm.
become fruitful and multiply and to replenish the earth and to have dominion and rulership in the earth, but not without the divine.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that is what is happening and has happened to me. And I think that there's a shift now within the church, and there's a whole movement
Mhm.
understanding
Mhm.
that we have a responsibility
Yes.
in the world and
Mhm.
for the world, because the earth is the Lord's, as
Yes.
they say, and the
Yes.
fullness thereof, the
Yes.
world and they that dwell therein.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, and I think that's how I see the man from Galilee. That's
Mhm.
how I see Jesus.
Mhm.
Humble, grew up as a carpenter's son, and
Mhm.
so on,
Mhm.
but discovered that
Mhm.
there's something more.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
was here to represent
Mhm.
Father of creation.
Yep.
And and so the potential in Jesus
Mhm.
has given to me an
Mhm.
understanding
Mhm.
that I have that same potential as well, because I have the
Yeah.
spirit, same
Mhm. Mhm.
Jesus.
Mhm.
I possess that spirit today. And so what I'm doing is talking like this.
Mhm.
And I try not to talk religious talk,
Mhm.
but really to talk in a manner that my intellectual friends can appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate it.
Yes, and I teach. I'm the dean of a college,
Yeah.
and with of the postgraduate program,
Mhm,
and I deal with these adults,
mhm,
um, not as if they're children,
mhm,
but adults with experience,
mhm,
adults who work for the government, adults who have made it in the business world.
mhm,
But in the postgraduate world, they
mhm.
are exploring stuff and they're
Yes.
writing theses
Yes.
and all of that.
Mhm.
And so I can't treat them,
Yes.
in this naive kind of world of fantasy.
Yes.
To me,
Yes.
what they are delving in, and I supervise
Mhm.
postgraduate persons doing their dissertations and writing their theses, and they have to do explorations like the scientists,
Yep.
like
Yep.
the
Yep.
sociologists,
Yep.
and they have to study stuff
Mhm.
that they're, the church doesn't help them in that way.
Yes.
The
Yes.
church needs help,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so I'm interpreting, as you're discovering,
Mhm,
the religious world and the biblical world in a manner that
mhm.
allows me to make greater sense of it. Sense, and I like your term. That's one of the things that attracted me to you, what you call
Yep.
applied intelligence.
Yes.
You
Yes. Yes.
because my intelligence is telling me that the unseen world
Mhm.
more real than the seen. As a
Yep.
matter of fact, the seen world is a product of the unseen world.
Yes.
And
Yes.
science is telling us that now, and the virtual world is telling us that now.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
but the the religious world
mhm.
should never have forgotten that.
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
things that are have been created by
Yes.
things that are not,
Yes.
out of the spatial world
Mhm,
and so on.
mhm,
So it's there's a revolution, I think,
mhm,
that's taking
mhm,
place. I call it a
mhm,
quiet revolution,
mhm,
but it is helping us
mhm,
to redefine
mhm,
the church,
mhm,
redefine spirituality,
mhm,
redefine the the cosmic world, and and no, I interact a lot with my science friends because they're telling me things, and I'm saying, oh, but we knew that a long time ago. We just didn't know if we must believe it, you
mhm,
know,
mhm, mhm.
um, and so on. So I think that that what I'm finding is that in Jamaica, for example,
Mhm.
you know, look at, we are less than 3 million people in
Yep.
Jamaica.
Mhm,
We're standing at the pinnacle of the sports world.
mhm,
Whether you talk about athletics or you talk
mhm,
about netball with the women, whether you
mhm.
talk about soccer, whether you talk
Soccer,
about
track.
track, we are there. Why you think that is there?
Mhm.
Because we believe in ourselves.
Yes, and that. Yep.
And when you study our history,
Mhm,
you realize that somebody like Marcus Garvey
mhm.
is a phenomenon.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and in our political world, Michael Manley, not Michael, his father,
Mhm,
Norman Manley and Bustamante and these guys and some of the other leaders in the Caribbean
mhm.
are men, and some women. Perhaps one of the sharpest minds today is the Prime Minister of Barbados,
Mhm,
who's
mhm,
a woman,
mhm,
and she confounds the world when she
mhm,
speaks because
mhm.
she believes in herself and she
Believes in
believes
herself.
in people. And
Yes.
I think that we as Jamaicans,
Mhm,
when you look in the creative world, the artistic world, the music world, when
mhm,
you look in the sports world, even when you look in the intellectual world and some of the professional fields, we are up there.
mhm.
Why? Because we believe in ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very,
And I,
very much.
yeah, and I think, I want to jump on a couple of things you said here. But first, I want to say your ability to be intellectually honest right, is important. So, when I posed the question asking for your thoughts, you were intellectually honest in regards the role of the church, the fault or whatnot, or so let's just say the negative role the church has played in it. You didn't say, oh, the church is to blame for everything, but you acknowledged, right, what is true. And I think if you intellectually, if you can't acknowledge what is true, right, you're going to have a hard time to build on anything. Just because it's true, and it's, I had a discussion once, no, actually it was over WhatsApp with a family member, religious, talking about all the wonderful things about the church. I said, yes, but two things can be true. And I listed, the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisitions, the Holocaust, slavery, all those things happened. And, particularly in slavery, as you mentioned, the church played a big role in it. So it's important to acknowledge it, but then you went on to explain, and you're honest too. What a lot of people don't like to hear, what I think is what I really like about you, is that you spoke in terms of slavery, and you did in terms of, they didn't go into the interior. They were brought to, and Black people, brought to the shores, and Black people enslaved people. And, first it started with the Muslims who did that, and then, the Europeans capitalized that on it and benefited on that. But it is true in nature, as you've said, that man, likes to conquer and possess. And slavery was something that existed before, but Europeans brought it to the next level. But so the intellectual honesty is important, because if you don't have an intellectual foundation of honesty, it's very hard to build something. But I also want to mention is that when you talk about Marcus Garvey yes, was phenomenal. And he had a saying, which I think I used in the beginning of my book, where intelligence rules the world, right? And ignorance carries the burden. Try to get as far away from ignorance as possible. Marcus Garvey said that.
Mhm.
The brilliance of that quote, and from a whole applied intelligence perspective, this is whole, a lot of what my book is written on, is that intelligence rules the world. And the transformation of the church now, we have to apply that intelligence, okay, and see how that can allow us to prosper. The same way the Jews use their religion to prosper, the church has to come into that, and the church has to become better, okay, at pushing the prosperity of its people, as opposed to just keeping us in the mentality we have to suffer, sinning and all that, right? So I really like how you've just intellectually applied your intelligence to the problem, which we face today. So there's not another question, but wouldn't mind you expanding on that, particularly even the words of Marcus Garvey, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah, and Marcus Garvey himself said, "Nobody can free you. You have to free yourself."
Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
And Bob Marley also said that too, in a
well,
sense.
Bob Marley picked it up and
Picked up on it.
popularized it,
Yes.
and that is really what we need to understand, and that is how I understand the teachings also of
Mhm.
Jesus of Nazareth. You
Yes.
know, where he says, the kingdom is not out there and out there, the kingdom is within you. You see, and you have to get to a place where you recognize that you are not just a son of man,
Mhm.
but you have now become again a son of God.
Yes.
In other words, you are infused with the Spirit of God,
Hmm.
you know. And when you talk about intelligence, one of the things that strikes me,
Hmm.
we put a lot of emphasis on intelligence, and of course, the mind itself,
Hmm.
as a man thinks. I've read you've quoted that yourself.
Yes.
As a man thinks, so he is. But
Yes.
but there's another dimension to life. What influences how a man thinks is very critical.
Mhm.
You know, and the understanding that we have, um, and I have from reading the text, is that we're either influenced by our natural instincts, which is called the flesh man, you know, or the attractiveness of the world, that we want to possess everything, or the deception of the spiritual world. You know, the devil is called the great deceiver, you see. And I think that those are the things that impact our mind and lead us in the way we think and our understanding of what is right and what is wrong, you see. But there's another influencer, and that is what is called not just the spirit, because there's a spirit world, but the Holy Spirit. In other words, there is a spirit dimension that is separate, different, and is connected with who we call God. See? And that Holy Spirit influences the mind.
Yes.
You see? And that is what saves us from this great intellectual, cognitive capacity that we have, from
Yes.
serving, as we would say, brother. We create idols, we make ourselves God. And rather than recognizing that there is, in fact, a potentate. He's not just a power, but he's a power with a personality.
Yes.
That's how we have personality.
Yes.
We are made with that, out of that likeness, and that personality must be subject to the spirit of God, the spirit of that personality of God. That must influence us so that we are saved from being selfish, self-serving, from oppressing others, from demeaning others, from benefiting ourselves by crushing others.
Yes.
So that's where I get the morality, the ethical dimension to life. And I think that is something that we really have to study and appreciate. Whatever language you want to use to describe,
Yes.
we have a lot of languages, you have French, Spanish, Portuguese, and we have immoral ways of acting too.
Yes.
And we lack integrity and so on. But we must recognize that there's a potential inside of us that links us with the divine personality of whoever God is. So we are sons of a father. If you can use that expression, we proceed from out of source.
Yes.
That is that we need to be cognizant of, and to recognize that we judge ourselves.
Yes. 100%.
Jesus said it, he says that he did not come to condemn the world. Imagine,
yes.
But that the world might be redeemed. And John goes on to say in his text, he says that the world is already condemned because it has chosen incorrectly how to make decisions. You see? And so it's the world is self-destructing.
Yep.
We destroy our environment. We destroy each other.
And that's a good point, because the whole thing about applied intelligence is how you make good decisions, right? That is the key about how intelligence. So the question is, you've brought in, how do we live to our potential? I believe if the best way you can live to the best potential and create happiness for yourself is to make good decisions.
Definitely.
And there must be some form of basis, right, for you to make decisions. Now, from a morality perspective, it is way above my pay grade to say, you have to be religious or you don't have to be religious. I don't have the answer to that. All I understand is that you speak about potential, and for us to bring out our potentials, we have to make good decisions. So when you talk about if the church is the center of many in our community in the Caribbean, America, wherever it is, the church has to start making 21st century decisions. And that's the whole thing about applied intelligence, is that I believe, because what I'm picking up here is that you could believe in God, you can be religious, whether you're Jew, Muslim, Christian, whatever, right? But it doesn't mean you can't apply more scientific knowledge or disciplined thinking or
Definitely.
understanding how the universe works and take that and apply it. Those two are your faith or what you believe in is not separated from good decision making. And I think, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but this is really what applied intelligence thinking is about and what the book is about. And I think what I'm getting from you is something like that.
Yeah, and it's very interesting now when we're talking about knowledge and wisdom and all of that. We understand from our text that it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Hmm.
In other words, you have to have an appreciation,
Mhm.
not that you're afraid of him, but
Mhm.
you have to have an appreciation of who he is.
Mhm.
And that really opens up your mind
Mhm.
to be able to interpret things, to
Mhm.
understand things.
Mhm.
That is how you understand the unseen world. How
Yes.
do we understand the unseen world?
Yes.
Science is helping us, but
Yes.
beyond science, we talk about having faith.
Mhm.
And what I will shock us right now to understand that faith is scientific.
Of course
Faith
it is.
is based on reality.
Yes. Yes, it
See?
is.
But
Yes, it
but
is.
but we think of faith as some
So true.
fanciful thing. I don't know anything, therefore I just believe, and
Yes.
so on.
So
But that
true.
is not so. Our
So true.
faith is based on a reality that we can't measure it
Correct.
because it's bigger than us. It's
Mhm.
beyond us. It's cosmic. It's out
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
It's out there in the global cosmic, I would say, God
Mhm.
sphere.
Mhm.
And we have to understand that the God sphere has in it intelligence,
Yep. Yep.
and, and it has in it,
Mhm.
um, the spirit of truth and reality. We just don't understand it. We don't know it. And if you are convinced that there is a God out there, then you can, in fact, exercise
Yep.
faith,
Yep.
which is actually saying it's faith not in something that we hope is
Mhm.
there, but
Mhm.
it's something that we're confident
Mhm.
is there.
Mhm.
You just may not be able to see it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so this is a very interesting time of discussion. It's also helping me to to gather some of my thoughts and
Yes.
ideas because I live in it.
Mhm.
I live in it, and I'm hoping
Mhm.
that my people can get there, and I hope that the church will
Mhm.
understand itself. Jesus had the same challenge
Mhm.
in his time when he came.
Mhm.
He went to all the festivals in
Mhm.
Jerusalem. The temple
Mhm.
was central to the life of the Jews.
Mhm.
Um, but he soon realized that they are hypocrites,
Mhm.
you know, and so on. He went every Sabbath
Mhm.
into the synagogues, but
Mhm.
the synagogues threw him out. You
Yes.
know, he didn't even have confidence in the
Mhm.
Sanhedrin.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until the end of his life, perhaps in the
Mhm.
last 6 months or so, that
Mhm.
he said to the guys around him, he says, I'm going to build my own ecclesia, the ecclesia is the governing council. He says, the synagogue isn't doing it, the temple isn't doing it, the Sanhedrin isn't meeting these people. I have to build my own. And that really is what the church should be.
Yeah, no, I agree. What I wanted to do as we close out, you've picked up. So I just went into my book, my book, and I want to read something and get your feedback, because I think it's what we're talking about, and I think, what is true. And when you talk about faith and reality, that is so right on, because you could only live in the real world, not a fantasy world. So having faith has to exist based on reality and truth. So I just want to read you this and just maybe get a comment on it. So this is from the first prologue in my book. So I say here, therefore, rational thought embedded in and within the existence of nature is central to a good life. Applying logic and intelligence is also central to dealing with the universe. And to do that successfully, we must accept nature as the one truth. So what I'm trying to point out there is that at the end of the day, nature is reality, or reality is nature, and we have to use logic and intelligence to build a life based in reality. And faith can come into it, but at the end of the day, the only thing that's true is nature, right? And how we deal with nature is hopefully how we get our happiness.
Well, when you talk about nature, um, you may very well be talking about the physical world, but more than the physical
Metaphysical.
and metaphysical world.
Yes, metaphysical world, yeah.
But we do have to know that there's a truth beyond the physical and metaphysical, and it's what I call the spiritual.
Yes.
Do you know our text says the heavens declare the glory of God, and the earth showeth forth his handiwork. In other words, there is a dimension, let's call it the cosmic dimension. And, in the Bible, the word for heaven is a plural word. The heavens.
The heavens, yes, suppose the heaven. Okay, yes,
yes. The heavens and the heavens of heavens.
Yes.
In other words, that ever expanding reality that's out there, that you can't see it.
Yes, yes.
But it says that the earth, meaning the world that we live in, is a manifestation of that remarkable reality.
Yes.
Which is of the heavens.
Yes.
When you begin to think like that, you realize that the scientists are discovering things that we ought to have been saying all along.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
But now we have to study the scientists and realize that they are discovering stuff that we have been very naive about.
Yes.
You see, so I think there is a truth beyond nature.
Yes. Yes.
But nature is a proof of that truth.
Yep.
You see, and we just really have to appreciate all the dimensions of what is, whether we can see it or not see it. This man who was a leader of the Jewish people, he came to Jesus one night and he said, tell me about this kingdom thing. You're having such an impact. The whole town is coming out to you. How does one get a hold of this kingdom? And Jesus says you have to be born again. He says, what? You're going to go back in your mother's. Jesus says, no, you don't understand. He says, imagine you're a Jew and you're a leader of the people, you don't understand this. And Jesus explained, he says, the wind blows. You can't see it. You don't know where it's coming from, where it's going, but you may feel it. So it's real, but you can't see it. And Nicodemus said, explain, I don't understand.
Mhm.
And Jesus says, how is it you don't understand
Mhm.
this reality? So
Mhm.
you're
Yes.
helping the people.
Yes.
And this is one of the things that has impacted me.
Mhm.
Why I read my science books. I have my good friends that we talk from time to time who
Mhm.
are scientists.
Mhm.
And and I am realizing that there are realities that I don't understand, but the
Mhm.
scientist has explored it,
Mhm.
described it,
Mhm.
made it out into theories for
Yeah.
us to live by, and
Yeah.
so on.
Mhm.
And but it speaks of
Mhm.
nature, speaks of
Mhm.
a reality that is even beyond it.
Yes, yes. And I want to read you one more
Yeah.
what I wrote, and I'm just going to preface it by saying, in my book, right, I believe in some early chapters or in the prologue, I talk about Christianity, and I list factually all the negative things, Christianity has created. And I ask people, I don't question their faith, but I ask people, is God a construct and all that. These are questions I'm sort of asking. So people are reading this, and the one reader said, "Whoa!" Right? So I said to him, "Finish the book. Finish the book. You may find, but you got to read and you got to finish the book, because I'm building something intellectually to
Mm,
hopefully to help you understand." So I'm going to just wait, but when you're talking about, so you and I always talk about, we can be talking other languages, but we understand each other, and really what we're saying is the same thing. So I'm going to put in a little bit more science in it, in terms of how I think spirituality is, which is what I do believe, right? So I write here, um, we ought to look to the realness of spirituality instead, because our spiritual energy in the universe is real. Our human body consists of electrical currents to function and requires fueling through nourishment. This is how energy is created, and the mind and body form a single energy force with real frequencies. That energy powers our bodies and minds, and those forces are generated in the mind, where our spirituality comes from. So for me, I do believe 100% in spirituality, because the human condition, needs some form of spirituality or whatnot. That is my personal, spiritual beliefs. But I explain it scientifically, because I do believe, not I don't believe scientifically, your biological, existence has energy, has forces, and when you feel a certain way from your mind on down, it affects your body and soul, as they say. So spirituality to me is a real thing, and that's how I see it. Now, one more point, people can say their spirituality comes from religion or whatnot. It's up to them. But a great philosopher, modern philosopher, Nazim Talib, who I've read all his books, he's also said, if you get rid of religion, what do you replace it with? Right?
true,
That's just food for thought.
true, true, true,
That's
true,
just food for thought.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the good book says that, you
Mhm.
get rid of God, but you create idols. In other words, you don't really get rid of God. You just don't want him, but you create them.
Yes.
And of course, for us today, we don't necessarily create gods, but we make ourselves gods,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know. But you cannot get rid of um, this reality,
Hmm.
that there is something
Hmm.
in the existence
Hmm.
of existence
Hmm.
that is of a spirit nature.
Hmm.
Or I like what you're talking about. It's like electrical energy,
Yes.
you know, and there is a sense in which your spirituality is an energy. Some religious people talk about it like that, or is a is an electrical
Hmm.
kind of uh, frequency,
Yes, it is a frequency. Yep.
right?
Mhm.
So, um, so again, it's either you're speaking French or Japanese or so on. We speak different languages, and we can speak from an intellectual standpoint, or if
Correct.
you want to speak from a religious standpoint, or so on. But what I appreciate with you is that you are open to different languages.
Yes.
We must express ourselves. We must appreciate where somebody's coming from. And a lot of that is caused because of our experiences or bringing the influences that have come to us philosophically, religiously, and so on. But I think that the world today needs to speak many languages,
Yes.
and we need to appreciate the how we articulate who we are
Mhm.
and our purpose in life, and work together.
Yes, and 100%, and work together. So listen, this has been a really, great conversation. I didn't have, and this is what I want. I just want a conversation. I didn't have, any questions written. The questions came from, just this discussion. So I really appreciate this. Our time has come to an end. I just wanted to let everybody know this is the first of many applied intelligence discussion with very interesting people. And I chose Dr. Morgan because I found him very interesting, and I'm learning a lot. And when I must say, selfishly, I'm having him on here and my discussions with him is because I want to learn more. So I'm kind of taking advantages of his brain. But a little housekeeping here you have to do this. I want everybody to subscribe to this channel, because if you subscribe to the channel, I can bring you more of these great conversations with very interesting people. We have a good lineup of guests, coming up. But subscribe, and hopefully we can have really, really great intellectual conversations, which will further our own human capacity to reach our potential. So with that, Dr. Morgan, I say goodbye to you, but we're definitely going to speak again, and the show will be released in the next little while. And I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to like it, and I have a feel a lot of people might have expected something different, but they're going to be I think pleasantly surprised in the way you think, because I really admire the way you think. And I thank you this Sunday morning for coming on the show. And this is only going to be the first of many where you're going to appear. So don't think that it's a one-time deal here.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to hearing from some of your other
Yes,
colleagues who will be sharing as well.
yes, yes. Well, we appreciate it, and have a really great Sunday afternoon, and we'll talk later.
Thank you so very much, Perry.
All the best. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.